First of all, good morning. I am Helena Da Silva Hughes. I'm the Executive Director of the Immigrants Assistance Center. And I'd like to welcome everyone here to the IAC today to discuss Census 2020. Thank you all for coming. The IAC, the Immigrants Assistance Center, IAC, was founded in 1971. So this is our fourth time that I have been engaged in extensive census outreach. However, the global pandemic combined with the fear and the anxiety facing immigrants is unprecedented. We've never been able in more than, we are so grateful, first of all, for all of the support that we've had from the city and the Commonwealth. We are very pleased to welcome Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Galvin, and New York Regional Census Bureau Director, Jeff Baer. I would like to now introduce Mayor Mitchell, our Mayor, City of New Bedford.
Thanks, Helena. All right, thanks, Helena. Good morning, everybody. A little bit of a breeze today, which in times of COVID is advantageous, so I appreciate we can set up shop right outside here at the IAC, and great to see the turnout today. It's for the folks that have been in the thick of evangelizing this year's census. It's welcome to see so many members of the media to help amplify all the great work that's being done at all three levels of the government, city, state, and federal. We're at a point now with the census, and it is amazing that I always give her grief about her ability to defy time, but it's amazing that Helena's on her fourth census already in the IAC. When the time came, some roughly 12 months ago or so, to form or 15, it's hard to track time these days, but to form a complete count committee, I turned to the veterans of censuses past, or censi past, not sure which. And that, of course, is Helena and Dave Lima from the Interchurch Council, who've done this work before. We really wanted to push hard this year for lots of reasons, but not the least of which is that we believe that although New Bedford in the last census was registered on the scoreboard as a city of 95,000, that we are in fact a city of over 100,000, and being counted officially over 100,000 has all sorts of implications, both formal and psychic, and we wanted to make sure that we put forward the best effort, and so we hired Lynn Kosh to work on it full time. The city hadn't had a full-time census director before, and she's done a fabulous job heading up the efforts, and of course there have been countless volunteers along the way. The reality is that it is really challenging. It's challenging in any year in cities that are dense like ours and have lots of folks with limited English skills, or folks who are disconnected from the broader community for one reason or another. It's hard to ensure a complete count. We've struggled in years past. Other cities have, and despite great efforts. And this year, as we know, things have, and I won't make this news conference about into a criticism of anybody in particular, but I think it is fair to say that the degree of difficulty was elevated by some decisions made by the federal government. We play the hand we're dealt. It doesn't do anybody any good to spend too much time thinking about what could have been, what should have been, but instead we're working hard to run down every last person in our city. So we're helped greatly, of course, by the folks at the Census Bureau. Jeff's here from New York, the regional director, and so many others who have along the way who've pitched in. We really appreciate your help as well, and as well as by Secretary of State Bill Galvin, who's had a very busy year, a very challenging year with a couple of number of really novel circumstances when you think about it. I mean, not just the pandemic, because that goes without saying, Bill, but also the implications of the pandemic, including mail-in votes, right? I mean, that was the mail-in voting process that is still sort of unfolding now is extremely challenging for every city and town in Massachusetts, for sure, but particularly for his office, and they've handled this so skillfully over these last few months to ensure that the elections are fair and accurate and legitimate. So I really want to commend you and your staff for that, Bill. But at the same time, this is happening amid a census, right? So and it's a census that even before the pandemic was different because of a shift toward more web-based counting of folks across the country, and so that came with its own complications. But you guys have really hung in there, Bill, and we really appreciate the partnership that you have with our city and have had over time, but particularly this year when more effort is needed to get the job done. We're here, again, for lots of reasons. We want to be one of those 100,000 plus cities, but even more fundamentally, we know that for every person who's counted, the city is eligible for a significant amount more federal and state funding. There are a whole array of programs whose funding is dependent on the size of any given municipality's population. It ranges from educational aid to highway aid to community development block grants to homeless assistance. It really runs the gamut. And so when you get right down to it, I would just say to folks two things before I introduce the secretary, because it can't be emphasized enough. We need you to be counted. It's confidential. It's painless. It only takes but a moment. Please do so, and do it for the good of your city. We need money. We don't have money growing on trees. We're not one of these municipalities that has the luxury of having too much cash on hand. We need resources so that we can continue to elevate the city's quality of life, that we can continue to support public safety and education and all the things that we expect government to deliver to our residents. And so, and it takes dough to do that, and the dough depends on people being counted. So we're down to a couple of weeks now. At least at this moment, it's a couple of weeks, and so we need everybody to run across that finish line for us. And we are thrilled that we've got great assistance. We've received great assistance from Bill Galvin and the Secretary of State's office in that regard. And so it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you today Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Bill Galvin. Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for all your assistance. I've been speaking to the mayor about the census now for, it seems, years, and I think it is years, as a matter of fact. But I know that he, among his colleagues in municipal government, has been one of the most aware of the significance of the census. He knew the challenge that this particular city has had in the past in getting an adequate and complete count, and he was ready at the beginning to help in every way that he could. I'm very grateful to Alina for hosting us here today. The message of today is not a self-congratulatory one about how wonderful we all are, what a wonderful job we're doing. It's really about what we can still do. And that's why we're here, because this is one of those places where we can still do something, where we still have the opportunity to reach out to people who have yet to be counted and make sure they're included. We've all been talking about over the last year or so as the census has been taken of what it means, and it's not just political. It's not simply legislative representation or congressional representation, that it really comes right down to money for the communities and the peoples that need it the most. And that point, I think, has been brought home in a very acute way this year. If we ever had reason to question what the role of the federal government was in supporting our daily lives, we can't do that anymore in the light of COVID-19. We recognize that whether it's health or education or transportation or aid to jobless people, or whatever it is, the federal government and being seen and being counted, that they know we're here, that we're not voiceless, we're not faceless, is so critically important. And to make sure that for the next 10 years, that message is received loud and clear in Washington and everywhere else, we have to reach out to communities like New Bedford and make sure each and every person is counted. We have to reach out to persons who perhaps aren't here or not, quote, legally present, but are here. And we know they're here. We know these people work. They make our communities work in so many ways. And it's institutions such as the one that's hosting us today that services these people. As I was speaking to Helena earlier, and I was talking about the various activities of this entity, the one word she kept mentioning was trust. And she's so correct. It's about trust. People who come here for help trust her, and they trust this institution. And that's the hope we have, that in the trust they have of those people and them, that they will in effect respond to the census. We can tell them how easy it is. We can assure them that it's confidential, that it will only be used for counting them, that it won't hurt them, it won't hurt their families, it won't hurt their friends, it won't hurt those people perhaps they share units with. But it has to come from trust, that they believe that because it's true, but also because they know that the person who's telling them that is somebody they've learned to trust. So the role of entities such as this is critically important. The challenge we have is not just simply that the Bureau's timeline has been shortened. I might add, Mr. Baylor, who's here, is going to speak, and he's been a terrific help to us. I must tell you, as Helena, I've got some experience in the census. This is my third census as the state's regional coordinator. And previous efforts, we had a New England regional office. So I must tell you that I wasn't thrilled to hear that we were merged with New York. Nothing against New York, but it was obviously of concern to us that we might not have someone who'd be familiar with our uniqueness in New England as we are. Well, Mr. Baylor has certainly been a good partner for us. He's done everything we've asked him to do. But I also recognize, and this is no secret, that he has not the authority to make policy at a higher level. And we know in this administration, that policy, and again, I don't want to make, this is not a political press conference, but I think we have to state the facts, that there have been a number of policy issues, starting with the questionnaire itself, which went to the United States Supreme Court. I think that's probably the first time in the history of the census since the founding of the Republic that the United States Supreme Court had to decide what was on the questionnaire. But we've had all this as background. The Bureau has been, in a sense, limited by what they can do to help us. So we have to help ourselves. We have to make sure that our people get counted. This is about no one being forgotten. This is about making sure that each and every person that's actually here, and I keep going back to that, they're actually here. You know, a while back I had to speak in front of a group and I had the impression they weren't terribly sympathetic to my effort to include people in the census. And I got a question from one of the audience, and he was questioning whether we should be trying to make sure all these people are counted if they weren't citizens. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you think they're really here? Oh, yeah, they're here, he told me. I said, well, do you think they're in your schools in your town? Oh, yeah, they're in our schools. Do you think they're on the buses? Yeah, they're on the buses. I said, well, do you think that your town should pay for them, or do you think we should get our fair share? Well, that was a showstopper. He couldn't come up with the right answer. Well, the right answer is, of course, these folks are here. They're serving our community. They're part of our community. And we have to make sure that we have the resources to help people, because they will be the citizens of the future, even if their parents are not citizens right now. And our Constitution is always assured that every person is counted. So that's our goal. So that's message number one. Message number two, it's not too late. We still have time. We're not sure when the count is actually going to be finished, but we do know this, that right now, it's not too late. So over the next few weeks, we want to make sure, whether it's here at a food distribution or a church or door to door as the Bureau continues its effort, that every person in this state and every person in this city of New Bedford gets counted. It's critically important for the next 10 years, long after people like me are gone, and the mayor is probably still here, but nevertheless, the fact of the matter is we want to make sure that those who are coming after us and after the people who are here now will have the services they need. So I'm grateful that you have us here today. I'm appealing to everyone who hears this, and I'm appealing to those perhaps who've been counted but might know people that haven't been counted. We're afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. If you operate out of fear, you'll let the people who don't want you to be successful win, and we don't want that to happen. Do not be afraid. Answer the census, make sure you're counted, make sure they see you, make sure they hear you, make sure they know your kids are here, your kids need help, your parents need help, all the people who are working with you need help. We need to make sure that we are not voiceless, and the key to that is answering the census. Thank you all very, very much. Jeff? It's now my pleasure to introduce Jeff Baylor, the Regional Director of the Census Bureau.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Jose and Tegan, two of my teammates on the census, it's an honor to be here today. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank Secretary Galvin. One of my first days on the job, he reached out to me when I came to New York back in 2013, asking to meet with me to tell me how important the census was to him. And I knew from that day, him and his team has been extraordinary, ensuring everyone throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts gets counted. And it's been a pleasure to meet you, Mayor Mitchell. I appreciate Helena hosting this conversation. Their efforts are tremendous. You are what get the census done. We're just a tool. We're a resource to use to help you to do that. So if you filled out your census, thank you. I greatly appreciate it, but your job's not done. We need you to have that conversation, letting people know that the census is safe, telling them how easy it was to fill it out, and letting them know what's at stake for the next 10 years. So when we talk about it's safe, Title 13 protects every piece of data we collect. A law put in place back in 1954 basically states we the Census Bureau, can never release information to anyone at any time for any reason. That's local housing authorities, IRS, Immigration, Homeland Security. No one can access our data at any time for any reason. So people need to understand that the participating in the census is safe. It's easy. You can do it on your phone, on your tablet, your laptop. Census takers are now out there knocking on your doors. Just open up your door and have a 5-minute conversation to fill out the census. And we ask basic information, your name and phone number, your age and date of birth, your race and ethnicity, whether or not you're of Hispanic origin. We ask for your gender, whether you own or rent your home, and then the relationship to the first person you list on your response. That's it. I want to point out we don't ask for citizenship status, we don't ask for bank account or credit card information, and we never ask for money or social security numbers. Okay? So it's easy to. And lastly, you heard the wonderful resources that are tied to a census, from our infrastructure, from our education for our children and our college students, from healthcare. I mean, we're all wearing masks here. Think about the strain that's been put on our healthcare professionals. One of the easiest ways we can support them is by filling out our census to ensure they have the resources they need for the next 10 years. And I'll close with this. You know, I'd like to talk about an example. And you think of a school. Let's imagine you have a school in your neighborhood of 100 kids. And let's say in the 2020 census, only 80 of those kids get counted. For the next 10 years, that school is going to receive 80% of the funding it deserves. And it doesn't just affect the 20 kids who weren't counted, it affects all 100. That's less resources with the same amount of needs. That's why we need your help. Have that conversation. Everyone here, everyone who's listening is a trusted voice, whether it's to your family and friends, to those you worship with, those you work with. Have the conversation about the census. And lastly, our census takers are out there now. It is safe to open up your door to a census taker. The CDC just released a joint statement with the Census Bureau telling you it was low risk to open up your door because every one of our census takers must wear a mask, they must socially distance, knock on your door and back up 6 feet. There's no need for them to come into your home to fill out the census. So take that 5 minutes to invest in the next 10 years. And every one of our census takers takes an oath of confidentiality for life, meaning if they were to release information that would identify an individual or a household, they will be fined up to $250,000 and imprisoned up to 5 years. We take this seriously because we know the trust of the public is the foundation of getting a complete and accurate census. Now, again, I want to thank Secretary Galvin and his amazing team, Mayor Mitchell, Helena. 93.7%, I think, is where Massachusetts stands right now, the number of households that have been enumerated. These last 6+% are the hardest. These are our urban core areas. These are the areas that need this more than any other. That's why we need your help to ensure we get a complete and accurate count. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to, anyway, if anybody has any questions, we're here to answer them. So, I don't know. Any questions from the media?
I just want to know how hard it's been to reach out to the people that don't speak English.
Well, one of the things, I can speak a little bit about that. One of the things we have done is we know, of course, social media is really important, but we also know that the hard-to-reach immigrant population rely on television and radio. And that is something we've been doing quite a bit of, is done a lot of programming about the importance of the census and exactly how we all need to be counted, and no matter what immigration status you have. So that is something that we have been doing quite a bit of. At the same time, working very closely with the ethnic churches to make sure that we also speak to the priests. So one of the things we've been doing this in September, this month, because we know we're at a sprint, is that making sure that we have staff that are multilingual available after Mass. They have tablets, and we can actually fill out the census right on the spot for the people who have not done the census. So we've been doing it over the phone. We've been, some of them, and even though our building is closed, some of our clients who've had the drop off the census and that they need help with. So we've been utilizing. But I think the media, the ethnic media, and the is extremely important, and of course collaborating with the churches, because again, it's all about trust.
Wayne, if I could just add a couple of points. Yeah, it's really tough. What we've tried in the vein of turning lemons into lemonade, we've linked up our census efforts with our COVID testing efforts. So we've had mobile testing sites going around the city almost on a daily basis to a number of places, but we've tried to in picking out the sites for testing to determine to line up our needs with respect to the census, right? They almost entirely overlap. So we've had in a number of places, including just over this past weekend, testing sites where we've coupled with census stations, like the one that you see right behind you, right there, and that's facilitated. I think a lot of people signing up, getting a lot of folks in, predominantly folks whose first language is not English. So that's worked very hard as well. One of the other things too is, and it bears noting, is that we've worked very hard in our school department to get the word out to families that, especially those who don't speak English, to fill out the census forms for the good of their own students, their own kids. As Jeff notes, the funds that we might be eligible for to support the education of our children depend in part on how many people are counted, and so that's been a big point of emphasis. So that work there has included direct outreach in every language, including through robocalls, but also in-person calls as well. So it's been a very comprehensive effort, and again, we're sprinting right now. I do, by the way, I do want to note and acknowledge and thank Representatives Tony Cabral and Chris Hendricks. Both of them are here today as well. They've been very supportive of what we're trying to do. Anybody else? Not all at once.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Given that 10 years ago we actually lost a seat in the House of Representatives because of the census count, how important is it, especially given the climate we're talking about, the Latinx population and them being at risk in this administration? Why does it make this effort so much more important now?
Well, it's clearly important, and as far as the statewide considerations go, I can turn it over to the secretary. But I mean, in general, yeah, that's always a big consideration for those the members of the media who are in the Providence, the New Bedford market. This is more of an issue in Rhode Island, the risk of losing one of that state's two House seats. But it's always in the Northeast, as people have tended over the last few decades to move to the Sun Belt of the country. The census has really, the success of the census count has played directly into their representation in Congress. And I don't know if that's something that's come up, it really hasn't come up in Massachusetts as much this year, right, Bill?
We're still concerned. I mean, we believe, based on all the statistics, that our actual population is 6.8 million. And if that were to verify in the census, most likely we would not. All the studies have shown we would not lose a seat. But we lost a seat last time. We lost a seat in Congress, which has two effects. One is obviously you're losing a seat, a vote. But the other piece, which is often overlooked, is it means every other district has got to expand in size. It has to have a bigger population to keep the member of Congress. And the point is that diminishes the significance of the pieces of that district. So whereas in the past, a city might be the dominant city in a congressional district, it might be less significant. But the real issue is this: if people are here, and we believe they are here, in Massachusetts, of that 6.8, 1 million of those persons are non-native born. And that's one of the reasons we're so concerned about immigrant populations. They may be legally present or non-legally present. The issue is they're here, and we want to make sure they're included so that we keep our representation in Congress and our electoral vote, I might add. And it also trickles right down to the local level, because this is the only actual count we have. Whatever the number is for the city of New Bedford, that number will then have to be redivided into all the wards in New Bedford, and if they're ward councilors, or if it's a town, if there are town meeting members, that's going to be reflected in that. Legislative seats, the same. So it affects everything. It affects political representation. I think this year, as I said, because of the obvious need for federal assistance, we've been focusing more on the money side of things. But the political representation is important too, because the decision about who gets the money is made by the political voices, and that's controlled by how many seats you have. So it's very important, for, not just for the state, but for communities as well.
Okay, anybody else?
If you're trying to reduce people's fears about being, counted in the census, can anyone definitively just say you can't be arrested, deported, or detained because of this?
Well, I think I think Jeff just said, I can tell you, I can tell you, oh, looks like we have,
What's your name?
okay.
What's your last name?
So anyway, I can answer your question. One thing I can tell you just offhand, as a former federal prosecutor, I could not subpoena the Census Bureau for any information. And if DOJ can't do it, nobody else can do it.
It's been litigated. It's been litigated in the past. You can't get this information, no matter what anyone believes. Unfortunately, the rhetoric that's been around the census has led to much more fear than we usually have. It's always been a point of confusion, though. If you're non-native born, you may not understand that the census is something you should fill out. We're here to make that point, that you should fill it out, but also to relieve any fear. It will not be used for anything else. The Bureau's regional director has said it, the case law says it, the mayor has said it, it's true. So believe it, and please answer the census. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.